Welcome to Well Read, the hottest new show on YouTube. The first episode of Well Read skyrocketed to a blistering and whopping 24 views! I can't even count that high! So I've already done an exclusive Xbox magazine, a Nintendo magazine, and a PlayStation magazine. Assuming you ignored the title of the video and the thumbnail, can you guess which magazine we're going to look at today? It's a little-known magazine that's even less popular than my channel. That's right! It's Electronic Gaming Monthly, or as I like to call it, EGM. Now I chose this issue, let's see, 145. You're going to have to take my word on it that says 145. I chose this issue because it has the final E3 coverage of the Xbox and GameCube before they came out later that fall. So a new console war is heating up, and only EGM and the other video game magazines of the time have it covered. Now let's get into this let's have some fun and go through EGM issue 145. All right, see here at the top we got PS2, PS1, Dreamcast, GameCube, Xbox, N64, and handheld. Somebody put a sticker on here. There's no edges, I can't get it off. But it is kind of an interesting sticker because you can win free copies of Zelda Ages and Seasons. See page 6. Oh, we certainly will. And here we got the Nintendo's GameCube takes on PS2 and Xbox. Giant fall preview. See what Sony, Sega, Microsoft, and Nintendo have in store for you. Oh yeah. So even though it's a new console war starting up, the Dreamcast is still around, but they've already announced that Sega has already announced they will not be making systems anymore, and that they're just going to be a software developer. So let's open her up. All right, here we go. The editorial. So the editor is Dan Hsu? I don't know. And he is the editor-in-chief, as it says over here, with all the other, look at all these positions for this magazine. So he's getting really excited for the upcoming console war, because he's talking about how it's been a while. You know, he's like got the Sony versus Saturn versus N64. I always see it more of a PlayStation versus Saturn. N64 kind of did their own thing. Now, Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis, yeah, that was a real console war. And he also goes about Atari, Coleco, and Intellivision, but no one really cares. So here he's talking about, we haven't had the raw excitement of a full-on system war in quite some time. And he's like, I'm talking about the excitement of walking down the aisles of Toys R Us and seeing rows and rows of games from competing consoles. I'm talking about the excitement of flipping through a game mag, and here he starts to threaten the reader. It better be EGM, by the way, or you're going to get a swift punch in the neck from me. Not sure if editors can do that nowadays. And seeing how similarly powerful systems compare to each other. Because he's talking over here about how the Dreamcast was way more powerful than the PlayStation and N64. Yes, of course. And that they had a major enemy, its own reputation in the hardware business. And then, I guess, a year later, the PlayStation 2 came out. And then a year after that, this current year of this magazine, the Xbox and GameCube are supposed to come out. And here he's already referring to Microsoft as one of the three major powers as they threw down their gauntlets. And it's kind of funny because they've never released a system up to this point. So, I mean, it's kind of a big assumption. You don't know if it's going to be successful. Down here at the Eat My Shorts section here, this is how you win the Zelda games that was mentioned on the cover. You look around the issue for quotes or references from The Simpsons or some famous movie, find one and email it to them, and 5 lucky winners will be chosen at random to win copies of this issue's 2 review crew games of the month, because there was Zelda Ages and Seasons. But the thing is, since I paid for this magazine and I'm doing the read-through, I really think it's only fair that only I enter it and that none of you, look for quotes and enter, because I'm going to be a little ticked off if you do. Here's an ad for Soul Reaver 2. A story beyond time, an adventure beyond belief, a game I never played. You got the game directory here. It's pretty handy, if there's a specific game you're looking for, it has it alphabetically here, and it tells you which page it's on. They also have a system key here, which I find kind of bizarre. And I think this is mostly just for the reviews later when they color code. They put the logo and the color for what system the game belongs to. Now here's the letters to the editor. The letter of the month goes to a gamer dad who takes responsibility. And he's talking about how he looks at the games before his kids buy them. I guess he goes for the E for Everyone games. And he's like, I'm checking it out. Games like Conker's Bad Fur Day for the N64 shouldn't exist, as it is in the same league as Joe Camel's We Aren't Trying to Appeal to America's Youth ad campaign. Joe died and so should ex-Diddy Kong racing stars with inappropriate mouths. Wow. And in a way, he kind of did, because I know they made Live and Reloaded, which was like a remake for the Xbox, but what has Conker done since then? But he does bring up a point here when he's like talking about games that are rated E but contain profanity, like SSX for the PS2. To me, everyone means the same as a G rating for a movie, so I don't expect to hear SHIT in a Disney flick. And he's like, thanks for hearing me out. And yeah, he's got a good point. You know, if it is E for everyone, then yeah, the language should not be like that. And the editor goes on to praise him. Even though they disagree with his take, I guess, on Conker and stuff, they do praise him for being involved with what his kids are exposed to. You know, working at a video game store, you know, there's a lot of parents who have no idea what their kids are buying. And so I would have to tell them. It's like, that's what the ratings are for. Now this letter here, they're asking about the mascot for the Xbox. Like, Sony has Crash, Nintendo has Mario and Luigi, and Sega has Sonic. Okay, so you knew that already. But Microsoft hasn't breathed a word about it. Most companies develop a game about their mascot first. And it's like, well, why should Microsoft be any different? Most companies develop a game about their mascot first? The PlayStation came out 2 years before Crash Bandicoot did. And Crash Bandicoot wasn't even made by Sony, it was made by Naughty Dog. The Famicom came out in 1983, and Super Mario Bros. Only came out in 1985. And Mario was created, I think, like, he was officially a creator, or gave his name back in 1981. I believe it was for Donkey Kong. And then, again, Sonic the Hedgehog didn't come out till 1991, 2 years after the Sega Genesis. And before that, Sega had the Master System and the SG-1000 and all that stuff. So, I mean, right there, he's wrong. He's wrong with all of these. And it's the same thing with, like, Gex became the unofficial mascot of the 3DO. 3DO came out in 1993, and Gex came out in 1995. The PC Engine kind of had Bonk for a while, and that came out in 1987, and then Bonk, or what they call them, PC Genjin in Japan, came out in 1989. So it's actually kind of the reverse. It's just they don't create the mascot and then design a game for the system. It's kind of like mascots just sort of happen. The same thing exactly here with because they say here, the response here, they're talking about maybe Abe from Munch's Odyssey, but it ends up being Halo, Master Chief from Halo. And it's because they even talked about that game in this thing, but nobody at the time knew how big it would be. And it's, again, it's not like they planned it. He just became the de facto mascot because he was so popular. More letters to the editor. We got a guy here talking about how one of their review crew here, Chi Chu, doesn't smile, so they did a really poor Photoshop job of making it look like he can smile, or that he's smiling. In fact, I think they said they took it from Greg Seward. Yeah, they took it from the previews editor and Photoshopped it on his face. Here's an ad for Sonic Adventure 2. And here you got the introduction of Shadow the Hedgehog, and there's, of course, Sonic. And they call him the Good Hedgehog. And over here we got Evil, Sinister, and Malcontent Hedgehog. Yeah, he looks, based on what you see, he looks angry and that, oh, he's the bad Sonic. But if you actually kind of play the games and everything, he doesn't actually seem like he is the bad guy. He's more of a rival. So yeah, I wouldn't call him evil or sinister. Maybe malcontent. Like, I haven't played the Shadow the Hedgehog game where he's walking around with like an Uzi or a submachine gun of some sort, but yeah, he's definitely got more attitude, a bad attitude, but I don't know if I wouldn't call him evil or sinister. This is false advertising. So here we have more letters. You got the girl having a crush on Snake, and somebody here wants a Metal Gear anthology. Do you guys know if Konami has expressed any interest in releasing a Metal Gear anthology disc, complete with old school and revamped graphics? And he would be willing to pay $60 to $80. And it's just at that time, the only games that were out were Metal Gear, Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, Snake's Revenge, and Metal Gear Solid. And Snake's Revenge isn't even an official sequel. So it's just kind of weird that because of how successful and popular Metal Gear Solid was, that they already want a disc that has the other two games on it. I'm assuming he just meant like the Metal Gear and the official sequel. And down here we have some envelope art. I was like checking out, see what people drew and sent in. Mario giving the finger to a question mark. Mega Man X stuff. And then some sort of weird mashup between Mario and Sonic, and it looks like Sonic's wearing Mario's face. Kinda creepy. And now we're in the press start section. The hottest gaming info on the planet. And let the games begin. And see, they do some sort of first-person shooter mock-up between all the major systems at the time. You got Xbox, GameCube, Sega, and PS2. Well, I should say at the time, but these GameCube and Xbox still haven't even come out yet. I see they got a neat little comparison chart here for their launch date, launch price, the number of launch games, the online capabilities, turn-ons, and turn-offs. And I do find it weird, though, that they listed the games systems in backwards order of when they were released. You'd think that the Dreamcast, since it came out first, would be here, and follow the pattern. And then here we got the prices of the systems. The Dreamcast and the GameCube are both $199.99, and the PS2 and the Xbox are $299.99. Now look at the difference in launch, the number of launch games here. We got 29 for the PS2, 18 for the Dreamcast, 15 to 20 for the Xbox, and only 6 for the GameCube, which kind of reminds me of the launch for the N64 in North America, which was just 2 games. And so I understand quality over quantity, but at least they have more games than they did for the N64. At least it's not just one. They've actually tripled the number of games. Woo! But I think 29 might be a lot. I think Dreamcast and Xbox here have it about right. I think 15 to 20 games, and 18 is right in the middle there. Gives you a good variety. So online capabilities here, built-in Ethernet port, but no online gaming till 2002. GameCube not built in, modem and broadband peripherals to be announced. With the PS2 has with optional network adapter. It's supposed to come out in the fall. And yes, only the Dreamcast, which is the oldest system, has had at launch online gaming with SegaNet in August of 2000. So I guess maybe this also had built-in Ethernet port, but the service won't be ready for another year, or, well, it says 2002, but the system coming out near the end of 2001, so I'm not sure the exact date of when that came online. But the SegaNet only came out available almost a year later, so I don't think they were able to play online for the first year. And then they just trying to say who the systems are kind of directed towards. The Xbox shouldn't be directed, people who shouldn't be interested in it are cheapskates and Mac users and prejudiced gamers who can't look past the name. And that's kind of funny because at the time, I think there was a lot of people who didn't understand why Microsoft was getting into console gaming. I was like that. I don't know, at the time, seemed to be a lot of people bitter towards Microsoft. And I can't remember exactly the reason back then. And I was one of the people that was just like, wait, no, they should stay out of this. They're computers. They shouldn't make any games. Get into the home console market. And then I played Halo. And I was like, okay, I take it back. And so that's the thing is here. It's like, I guess I was one of those prejudiced gamers. But I did look past the name once I actually tried the games. And I became an Xbox guy. And in here for the GameCube, they say, gamers who watch a lot of DVD movies or value good looks over personality. And that's the thing is, there is, as we'll see later in the magazine, I don't know what the word would be called, a model, I guess, of the GameCube that does come with a DVD player. But yeah, that's the thing about GameCube and, Nintendo in general, was they were focused on making game systems. And to that, I do respect that. Instead of making a whole bunch of fancy stuff, there are some things where it's kind of like, this should mostly be focused on gaming, not just general entertainment. But I also, again, back to this first-person shooter thing, it is kind of funny. They chose Abe to represent Xbox. They chose Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal to be the Sony guy. Of course, Sonic represents Sega, and they picked Luigi over Mario for Nintendo. Now, moving on over here, go to all the stuff this is what I was just talking about adding a whole bunch of peripherals and things. You got the hard drive, which could store a whopping 40 gigs. You could attach to the back of the PS2. You got the network adapter, keyboard and mouse, and then here, this is a monitor. It says available winter 2001, and I looked it up and I couldn't find that there was actually, and it says Sony right there. I almost thought that this was a joke. I was like, that they were, because of the keyboard and mouse, that they just kind of threw in a computer monitor. But it does say it's available in 2001, but I couldn't find an official Sony monitor that was supposed to be sold to go with the PS2. So I don't know if they canceled that or if it just maybe any Sony monitor you could have used or any monitor, but kind of turning it into a computer, which there is a quote later about that, and I will get to it when we get to it. Here's an ad for EB Games. They're not called that anymore. Electronics Boutique. I went from like Electronics Boutique to EB Games to GameStop. Here's just a huge coverage of the Metal Gear Solid 2 trailer. They just go, like, you're looking at this one page, you're like, that's not that much. But after you get past this amazing 4 DVDs for 49 cents each ad, it just goes on and on and on. This is here. Translator for Hideo Kojima. Let us just say this before we start. Metal Gear Solid 2 on Xbox, no comment. It did eventually come out. I think it was kind of a version that had more stuff too. I have it. I don't think I beat it. Here they just analyze the trailer. A little obsessive. Kind of reminds me of the YouTubers of today who will look at a trailer for like the new Star Wars movie or the new Marvel movie and just go through every little thing to be, whoa, what could this mean? What could that mean? Oh, I think I know. I have a theory for this here. Let's see, again, Hideo Kojima says here, when I pick hardware to do a game, I don't look at the specs of the machine. I don't really care about that stuff. I don't care about how good the system is because all consoles right now are at about the same level of power. I look at the audience that it has. Releasing a Metal Gear game on a Nintendo console would be ridiculous. I don't know about GameCube, but their machines until now have been for younger kids. And then, of course, they do release, what was it, Peace Walker for the GameCube? Correction! It was actually the Twin Snakes. I had to look it up. Which was a remake of Metal Gear Solid, but apparently they made it to play more like Metal Gear Solid 2. And the thing was, like I said, I did play it on the Xbox. Was it Resurgence, I think? Correction, again, it was not Resurgence, it was Substance. And I do believe I did play that one, and I don't know, it was a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure I got to this point where I was having to use a sniper rifle and cover somebody as they walked across these platforms. And I think the thing was I couldn't do it, and I wasn't really enjoying the game up to that point anyway, so it's just like, forget it. And I just gave up on the game. But I did replay it. I did play the PS2 version for this read-through. So I was just going through like the opening. And there seemed to be less combat options than I remember for Metal Gear Solid. Maybe I just couldn't find it, but I would like hit every button. I was looking for like the sleeper hold that you used to be able to do in Metal Gear Solid, and I couldn't do that. All I could do was just shoot opponents with enemies with the sleeper gun or beat them up, but the chokehold and stuff was so much more effective. And the thing was as well, the first boss fight is like first person. You need to like switch into first person mode to fire at her, and it's not a good game for first person combat, especially against a boss in that style of environment at least. And like it's been so long since I played the original Metal Gear Solid, and I'm pretty sure there was a first person mode, but I think maybe it was when you're using a sniper rifle or something. But yeah, I did not think it was a good choice to do that in this type of game. I definitely was not hooked to this game like I was when I played the original Metal Gear Solid, because I think everyone was blown away by that game at the time. But this one does not do it as the same, but it is something I wouldn't mind trying again. And this is an interesting article. Where Are They Now? It's about Warren Adventure Robinette. And this guy was a programmer for Atari. And so he programmed this game called Adventure. And back then, I don't even know how it is in the current industry, but they didn't get royalties. They just had a salary, and they couldn't even, I guess they didn't have credits and stuff like that. So he added a secret, hidden adventure. Robinette's dirty little secret is he put his name, created by Warren Robinette, and you had to do a specific thing. You had to take this, so he says here, there was a 1 pixel object, the smallest possible dot, that was the same color gray as the background. It was hidden in a little chamber surrounded by walls. You couldn't see it until you ran into it. If you took the object around throughout the game world, you might eventually discover that it let you go through one of the side walls near the Yellow Castle into the secret room that contained my signature. And thus he invented the first game secret. Later, after when he was no longer working there, I guess there were people that found out about it, like gamers, and Atari found out about it, and he says, I thought they would expunge the secret when they found out, but the manager of Atari Games Designer said he thought it was kind of cool to have hidden surprises in the video games, like searching for Easter eggs on Easter Sunday. And so the video game term Easter egg was born. But Robinette thinks they probably didn't do it because they didn't remove it, because it would have cost $10,000 to make a new mask for the ROM chip used in the cartridge. They did assign a programmer to track down where my name was in the code. He later told me that if he'd been asked to remove it, he would have replaced created by Warren Robinette with fixed by Brad Stewart. And he says here, I wasn't a great artist. My ducks look like dragons. And yes, those look exactly like ducks. Atari ducks. But down here in the No Joy Luck Club, he was talking also about how there were ex-Atari staffers, they never got royalty checks. There were members of the Dumb SIHT Club. In 1979, there were about 12 programmers designing for the Atari 2600. 4 left to start Activision, and another 3 started Imagic, both which sold $50 million worth of video games in their first year of business. All those guys were multi-millionaires. And what did they say about those who left us at Atari? Oh, and what did that say about those of us who left at Atari? So they thought they were pretty dumb, for staying when if they had gone off and started their own companies, they could be multi-millionaires too. And instead, they started a club about how dumb they were. But the joke's on those other guys, because now those guys from Activision and Imagic couldn't join their club. Losers. So here at the top, we got the 10th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog. And it's a birthday pack that includes the game Sonic Adventure 2, a special music CD, and a 10th anniversary gold medal, and a Sonic the Hedgehog series history booklet. And it's kind of funny when you look in the perspective that this was his 10th anniversary, and this it's hard to believe because this magazine came out in 2001. So he was 10 years old at this time, and now it's 21 years since then. So this has only been about a third of his life cycle, or his life since he's been created. And down here, we got a quote from Sonic's creator, Yuji Naka. You got EGM asking him, are you happy to see that Sonic is still around after all these years? His answer is yes. And they say, a concise response by Yuji Naka, head of Sonic team, followed quickly by crickets chirping. I'm like, well, what kind of question is that? You're asking if he's happy that Sonic's still around after 10 years? No, I'm miserable. I hate it. That's awful. That's the worst thing I've ever heard. But funny story about Yuji Naka. As of the recording of this video, he was just recently arrested not only once, but twice for insider trading. And I just saw a few days ago that I guess he just got indicted. He's just been formally indicted over his insider trading offenses. Well, I guess that's not actually really that funny a story. It actually kind of sucks. And here we got a quote from Peter Moore, the president of Sega of America, when asked which of the console makers Sega relates to the most. He says, and if it's sharing a belief that the future of the industry is online, sharing and networking games, then we're close to Microsoft. And it's kind of funny because not too long after that, he ends up becoming a vice president over at Microsoft for Xbox. Down here we got the Ken Kutaragi, president of Sony CEI, and I believe he was the one who created the first PlayStation, tells the Financial Times what he thinks of the Xbox. Microsoft was finished before it even got started. They have no games. Retailers in the US are already disappointed. All the games were just extensions of PC games. Nobody needs to buy an Xbox. Now, he was wrong about all that back then. Now, it's a little more truthful because the Series X, Xbox One and Series X, they don't really have that many exclusives. And, even when you've been hearing them trying to buy up other companies, a lot of those stuff they're still going to put on multi-platforms, including like Psychonauts 2 and stuff like that. So here's another one from Hiroshi Yamauchi, president of Nintendo Company Limited. He says, internet games available today are for hardcore gamers. I don't believe the general public is going to be very interested in them, and I doubt that net games will turn out to be profitable. Wrong. Man, these guys were so, anti-prophetic. Or maybe they were prophetic. No, wait. I'm not much of a internet gamer. I do know it is pretty popular, though. So over here we got Deuce X jumping from the PC to PS2, and Time Splitters 2 getting it right this time. I did try this one out. I couldn't really get into it. It seems really complicated. You have all these different abilities that you can invest your points in. I don't know. I didn't really play the game enough to give it a fair review, so I'm not really going to say anything. I just know that I wasn't really into it when I was playing it. This one here, though, this one was weird. Time Splitter 2. That was the first time I ever played a Time Splitter game just to test it out for this issue read-through. And the first stage almost feels like it's GoldenEye. It has very similar GoldenEye controls. It has the same auto-aiming, the same type of music and setting. It almost feels like it's spoofing GoldenEye. And I know that this series kind of has a sense of humor, so I'm kind of wondering if the first stage did that on purpose. Because it even takes place on a dam in Siberia. But overall, from what I played, like I said, if you like GoldenEye, it felt very GoldenEye-ish to me. It's the gameplay is a little dated, but I'm sure at the time it was... Well, Halo was about to come out, and they were using those double analog sticks, so which is the perfect way to play a first-person shooter. So here's a poll for which platform had the best showing at E3. 56% say the GameCube. Down here in Tidbits, we got the next Bleemcast release is, and they're talking about the releases for the Dreamcast, which will make Konami's PS1 classic Metal Gear playable on the Sega system. No word on release date, but expect it soon. So from what I saw, this did come out, I guess, in October, but then Bleem ended up closing in November. So there you go. And then here talking about Robotech, a popular mid-80s Japanese animated TV show, is finally coming out to the consoles, courtesy of, who cares? First game is due out in 2002, and that game ended up being Robotech Battlecry. And it came out for the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, and GameCube. And Namco unveils Tekken 4. So here they are, the graphics, the designs of some of the characters here. I was initially going to say something like, it's weird how the Tekken games have always been PlayStation exclusives when Soul Calibur is on other platforms. And so I did a quick check just to see if Tekken was on anything else. And yes, of course, it's been on a lot of other things. And then it just jogged my memory that I'm like, oh yeah, I have Tekken 6 and 7 and Tag Tournament on Xbox systems. So I'm glad I never told anyone that embarrassing story. And over here we got the top 20 best-selling games of April 2001. And look at that, Nintendo games take up the top 4. And 3 of the top 4 are Game Boy Color games. And the top 3 are Pokemon games. Of the 9 Nintendo-based games that are in the top 20 here, all of them but one are like a Pokemon, Kirby, or Mario game. The only one that isn't is Rocket Power Getting Air. Paper Mario, that's a good one. And then down here they got the top 10 in Japan. And you're looking at PS2, PlayStation, WS, and then the Game Boy and stuff. And it's kind of like, WS, what is that? Well, that stands for WonderSwan. And outside of the fact that it says it right there, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, I wonder if that is WonderSwan. And then I looked over here and I was like, oh, it is. It's Bandai's handheld that I don't think it ever came out to the West. Look in Japan, the top 10, how many are handhelds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 10 games are handheld games. And that's the thing that I just realized here, the Game Boy Advance. There's nothing here for the Game Boy Advance in the top 20. Which one was it? Super Mario Advance. And over here we got the import calendar. Well, we got the release calendar, and then the import calendar's right here. And they're saying the import pick of the month is Final Fantasy X. I gotta say, I don't think you would want to import that unless you knew Japanese. I mean, there are some games you can get away with where you don't really need to understand, like there's not complicated menus or you know choices on what you're supposed to say, but I think like an RPG, especially a long one, you might need to know a little bit, at least a little bit of Japanese to play a game like Final Fantasy X. So here's a little comic thing for Hsu and Chan game designers in the Trade Show Diaries. And I guess it's just these fake game designers, how their experience at E3 was. And they eventually kind of go crazy. At least this one does. I don't know. It's okay. So here's an ad for the Final Fantasy Chronicles. It was released on the PlayStation. It had a copy of Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger together. I'm not sure why they picked those two games. But this one here, it says, it's about time. And it's like, are they saying like, it's about time that they finally released these? Or it's about time? Because this is Chrono Trigger where there's time travel. I don't know if there's time travel in Final Fantasy IV. I haven't played it enough to know if there is that, but I really don't think there is. But if it does, then it makes more sense. So here we are at the main event. Here, you are HerE3. HerE3. So yeah, this is all, they got rid of their preview section for this month because they may as well have they just kind of incorporated into E3 because E3 is pretty much previews of upcoming software and hardware and stuff. And then here they say the best of show was the GameCube. So back to that poll, the GameCube, 56%. EGM agrees. Seeing all of our fave Nintendo franchises resurrected on the big ends. Yeah, they use this term big ends a lot in this magazine. I think it's super lame. It almost sounds offensive too. The big ends, new box, got us giddy inside. Even though the company didn't have anything of Mario 64 caliber at E3, the GameCube was all we could talk about, besides the new Metal Gear Solid 2 trailer and stealing previews editor Greg Stewart's money. And if you want to know what the money they're talking about, we'll get there. So, yeah, they started off with the GameCube, Nintendo. So here they had a presentation where they said they had charts and stuff to illustrate the point, because they're saying there's a disturbing trend in the video game industry. Too much emphasis on graphics, sequels, and games appearing on multiple platforms. And yes, to an extent that is true. Well, maybe not just to an extent, it is true. But I mean, they're trying to say that they want to give fresh surprise and joy, and to fight the trend of this. But the thing is, if you look at Nintendo as well, I mean, they do a lot of games that are sequels. And, well, I mean, I guess if you look at the Switch and stuff, I mean, they are taking older games. Like, there's maybe not as many cross-platform games, at least not with Xbox, but there are a lot more games that are on the Switch that are also on, like, PlayStation systems, and there are games that are on the Switch that are also on Xbox. But, I mean, they do have their cross-platform games, and they are taking a whole bunch of older games, like the old Final Fantasy games, and putting those remasters and stuff on the Switch. There isn't as much an emphasis on graphics at Nintendo as there are at the other gaming. That's even still true to this day. And I guess you could say, oh, look at all the Mario games and stuff like that. But, you know, if you look at the Mario games, so many of them are pretty different from each other. It's not just always a direct copy and paste with, you know, a different story or whatever, or new stages. I mean, yes, there are, like, the new Super Mario Bros. Games and stuff like that. But, I mean, they got, like, the Mario Galaxies. Again, there was 2 of those. Mario 3D World, Odyssey, Mario Maker. You know, so the thing is, they do mix it up, even though they sometimes make sequels within those own series. Within those series of Mario games, Mario isn't a one-trick pony. So here, this is what I was referring to earlier about the model of the GameCube that comes with a DVD player. They just call it Panasonic's GameCube or something, but it ended up being called the Panasonic Q. And yeah, I just don't understand what was even the point of it. I mean, like, yeah, yes, it can play DVDs, but I guess if you're a person who doesn't have a DVD player, and you wanted both a DVD player and a GameCube at the same time, then I guess. But, I mean, I'm looking at this retrospectively, so I don't know exactly in 2001 how common or how available or how expensive DVDs normally players were. So it just seems weird to make a combo unit for that. Like, we've seen combo units before, like where they combine, like, other third-party developers will make a combination of, like, the Sega Genesis and the Sega 32X and the Sega CD or something like that. But this was to just play movies. Oh, and audio CDs. It says here, a U.S. release is likely, but don't expect this deluxe model hit until next year. Or at all, because it didn't come out, and it stayed in Japan. Oh yeah, but there was something over here when they're talking about the online capabilities of adding a modem adapter and a broadband adapter. But they're saying, like, but Nintendo was mostly silent about their online plans for the GameCube. And there's a interesting line here by Saratu Awata. If we can find a way to come up with a network system that's going to support a worldwide audience and be sustainably profitable, then we'll definitely go in at that point. But right now, we feel we're a profitable company offline. And there's no need for us to run to the online market to try to boost our profits at this point. And yeah, you know, it kind of seems like a logical approach. You know, if you're successful offline, then I guess you don't need to. But it's also kind of like where Nintendo kind of seems to play catch up, you know, with other console developers. I mean, Nintendo is innovative, but it's like they were the last ones to ditch cartridge-based games to go to optical discs. And even now, when you look at the Switch, they went back to cartridges, and so they were behind the game on that, which, you know, cost them a lot of third-party developers with the N64 when it came to going to the PlayStation. And here again, they're kind of behind on online. But I mean, I don't think that broke them. That definitely did not break them as a company, because I wouldn't even, with the Switch era, I still don't really consider them who you'd go to for online gaming when you look at, like, PlayStation or Xbox. But they are an extremely successful company. I guess they know what they're doing. And here we have the different models of the GameCube controller. So that was, I guess, the one they saw at, I think it was Space World. Yeah. And then this is the one that they ended up going with. So yeah, they changed the colors. And then the B button used to be like the X and the Y button, and it was green. But now the A button is green, and the B button is a small red button. And also here is interesting is to find out that the Game Boy Advance could be used as a control in the GameCube. It's neat, but I don't understand how it would work, especially since the Game Boy Advance doesn't have as many buttons as the GameCube controller. But it is still cool. And then down here we have the GameCube No-Shows. So these were the games that I guess they'd heard about. Oh, yeah, there was actually a leak, I think, on their website by mistake. But thanks to a slip-up on Nintendo's website, we managed to uncover another batch of games that were planned for the show, but never quite made it. The notorious no-shows include 100 Marios. I don't know what that was. I was looking up online, I kept finding something called Mario 128 or something, but I don't know if that was the same thing, but I couldn't find anything on 100 Marios. Regardless, whatever this was did not come out as that. If it did, which I don't think I think it was probably scrapped. 1080 Snowboarding 2 didn't come out. Daishin the Giant did. It was originally supposed to be for the Nintendo 64 DD that only came out in Japan. Perfect Dark Zero did not come out for the GameCube. Pokemon just says Pokemon. Mario Net, it was not a game. See, at first when you're looking at all the Mario, I was thinking that it was a Mario game. We'll play on words here, but I guess they would have put a dash between Mario and Net if it was supposed to be like Mario as a marionette. But it was actually supposed to be a marionette and game, and they never came out. Mario Party 4 and Super Mario Sunshine did. Thunder Rally was canceled, and I think Too Human was canceled as well. So here's the first GameCube game that they cover from E3, Luigi's Mansion. I have played a little bit of this one. I really like Luigi's Mansion 3. I've liked Dark Moon from what I've played from it so far. And this one as well. It's just like I'm playing them backwards almost. So you start to see the drop in features and the drop in graphics and stuff, but they're still fun games. Super Smash Bros. Melee. And you can't really go wrong with the Smash Bros. Games. From the ones I played, they all seem pretty good. But what I thought was weird was this right here. It says Super Smash Bros. Melee is the long-awaited sequel to 1999's hit N64 brawler Super Smash Bros. 1999. This magazine came out in 2001. 2 years is a long wait for a sequel? Well, I know back in like the 80s, they'd pop out sequels like every year, sometimes within months from each other, but I don't know. 2 years almost seems too fast nowadays for a sequel to come out. So yes, if you like Smash Bros., there's no reason you wouldn't like this one. Pikmin, yeah. So I played a little bit of this, and yeah, from what I've heard about this game, it was that Shigeru Miyamoto got the idea while he was in his garden, and so you got to pick up collect these guys, and you're pretty much like a slave master as you get all these guys to do your bidding, and to do certain things in the stages, you need a certain amount of these Pikmin. You'll say like you need 10 of them to pick up this thing and move it out of the way. I haven't got to the point where there's different colors, so I'm wondering, the colors, if they mean anything, if they can do different abilities or something. Be an interesting game dynamic if that's it. That blue ones, that they all have certain abilities, so you can only use yellow ones to do this function or blue to do that function, so that would be neat. And down here we got the best GameCube game. They gave it to Star Wars Rogue Leader Rogue Squadron 2. And the funny thing is, the GameCube game that impresses the most packed spaceships and John Williams tunes, not coins and gay Mario music. Do they mean gay as in happy, or like back in the day when this magazine came out, people used the term gay a lot to mean like lame or stupid. They're like, oh, well, that's gay. So do they not like Mario music? Mario music's pretty fun. Up here we got Wave Race Blue Storm. So yeah, I was playing that. I remember playing the first Railway 64 and that they had really good like water physics. Like it really felt like you were bouncing on the waves and stuff. When I played this, I didn't get that feel. It's still certainly playable and the graphics are better. I mean, it's a game I would play more of. But my all-time favorite jet ski game will always and forever be DOA Extreme 2. They also have awesome water physics in that game. That's the thing is like I compare it. When I was playing this, I was kind of thinking of how I felt playing DOX Extreme 2. And that felt much better than these. And then down here we have Star Fox Adventures, Dinosaur Planet. Now see, this was designed to be an N64 game originally called the Dinosaur Planet. But I believe the story was, again, Shigeru Miyamoto was involved in this one, and he saw the character was a fox, and it reminded him a lot of Fox McCloud. So eventually they rebranded it as a Star Fox game. And the actual title, I believe, is just Star Fox Adventure. And they got rid of the Dinosaur Planet. And yes, I just confirmed that it is just Star Fox Adventures. One thing I thought was interesting about this write-up here was that it says, it's a 3D action adventure similar in style to N64 Zelda games. Even the Z targeting is the same, but starring Fox McCloud and his fruity-looking dinosaur sidekick. Now, is it because he's got like different colors? Or do they mean like fruity in a derogatory sense? Like, first they talk about the gay Mario music and then the fruity looking dinosaur. This feels like stuff that a publisher at an editor at EGM or whoever these people, like whoever wrote this, could not get away with saying that today. But up here you got Metroid Prime. I have played that, a little bit of that, a few years ago. Because I had this, I don't know if I probably mentioned it in one of the either read-throughs, that I had this huge backlog of games, which I still have. But years and years and years and years had gone by of me owning all these games that I'd never played. So I eventually just went through them one at a time, just to play at least like 20 minutes or the first stage of these games, just to say at least I got some of my money's worth. I mean, I still plan to eventually get to play all of them, but I just want to at least try them all. And this was one of those games that I had just put way back on the back burner. And actually, I don't think I'd ever played a regular Metroid game before, so this was my first time playing a Metroid game. And it was a first-person shooter, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And I know a lot of, it's a very popular series. They got the 3 of them out, and there's been a lot of rumors and hype and expectations for Metroid Prime 4. I don't know if that's ever coming out. But moving on, The Legend of Zelda. So this must have been Twilight Princess, because Wind Waker was much more cartoony. I did think this is interesting here that the name for Zelda from, again, Miyamoto says, the name came from none other than Zelda Fitzgerald, the wife of the famous American author F. Scott Fitzgerald. We wanted a good name, a kind of eternal female name, a name that's going to last and have appeal. She was a rather famous woman who was kind of strong. And so we decided to go with her name. Yeah, she was kind of strong. Eternal Darkness was called Eternal Darkness. Sanity's Requiem. And that's the thing is, it was because when I played this, when I first saw, I go through the magazine first to see what the games are, and I test them out. And then I come back and I go through the magazine and read what they have to say about it. And I remember seeing this centurion here, this Roman centurion. But when I was playing the game, it was more like this, which I didn't notice that screenshot the first time I played it. It was like this woman in a mansion with like a shotgun and these creepy things. So the game is like I guess like maybe a survival horror, but it's like a mystery horror game. And, it has to do with the death of her uncle or something, who, when she sees him, he's like this, just a blob or pile of goo. But that's the thing is, when I was playing it, I was like, what does this have to do? What does this have to do with a Roman centurion? Like, did they totally change the style of the game? But no, over here it says the plot spans thousands of years and has several gameplay quirks. I guess the rest doesn't matter. It's just that part right there. This plot spans thousands of years. So that's the thing. That's why there's the Roman centurion in there. Oh, yeah. What I experience is you go around the mansion looking for clues. It's kind of puzzle-solving stuff. It's not really my type of game, but it did, especially being in a mansion and dealing with these kind of undead things and the camera angles and looking for clues, all that kind of stuff. It did give me that Resident Evil vibe from the first game. And up here we have Cameo Elements of Power. This was canceled for the GameCube, but it did come out for the Xbox 360. So yeah, this must have been before Microsoft bought Rare. Disney's Mickey for Nintendo GameCube. That ended up being Disney's Magical Mirrors starring Mickey Mouse. It was developed by Capcom, published by Nintendo, and produced by Shigeru Miyamoto. So I kind of want to try that out. So down here they also talk about some more of the games and the rest, so that they were revealed. I'm surprised that these didn't have, for being the big names, that they didn't get more coverage. But there's Mario Kart for Nintendo GameCube, which was Double Dash, and then Donkey Kong Racing, that was canceled because it's also made by Rare. Raven Blade was canceled, and Animal Forest became Animal Crossing. Now look at all these different colored GameCube controllers they got over there. So I guess that was the one that was on the top seller list in Japan. And so up here it has GameCube, the third-party scene. Third-party support was abysmal on the N64, but that's expected to change on GameCube. Several third parties pledged GC allegiance prior to or during E3, including EA, LucasArts, THQ, Namco, Activision, Ubisoft, and Tecmo. The biggest news came from Sega, who announced plans for 10 titles. Only 3 of them were at the show. Still, the number of third-party games shown at E3 was kind of small. They lost a lot of third-party developers with the N64 because they didn't go to CD. They stuck with cartridges, which CDs held a lot more space, and I think they were easier to program for. And like, it wasn't like CD technology was new for video games, because TurboGrafx had a CD add-on. The Sega Genesis had a Sega CD add-on. And even Atari with the Jaguar had a CD add-on for some reason. As we know, Nintendo went with disc-based systems for a few generations, and then they went back to cartridges with the Switch. Then here for Phantasy Star Online, it says, let's talk with Yuji Naka, president of Sonic Team. Why did you choose GameCube for Phantasy Star Online over another system like PS2? And Yuji Naka says, I think it's because the architecture for the GameCube is similar to the Dreamcast. Sega and Nintendo have the same experience. Sega Saturn was really difficult to develop for, so Sega had to make Dreamcast easier to develop for. Also, Nintendo N64 was a limited platform too, so they have also gone and made GameCube easier to develop for. And then they ask, will you ever team up and design a game with Shigeru Miyamoto? And he's like, I talked to Nintendo, like joking about doing something or whatever, but not at the moment. It's just talk for now. Even if it's going to happen, it's a very tough kind of thing to develop a game together. So that'd be interesting, like the creator of Mario and the creator of Sonic making a game together. I wonder what kind of game that the two of them would come up with if they worked together on something. You know, with Sonic and Mario being famous as platformers, would they make another platformer, or would that be too predictable, and would they try something different? Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader. That one was actually really, really fun. But when I was loading this up, I was expecting not to really enjoy it that much, because I don't know when it was, maybe a year ago or so, I played Star Wars Squadrons on Game Pass. I got sick of that one pretty quick. So I was just wondering if I was over these type of Star Wars spaceship battling games. But well, no, you know, when I was playing this, whatever they did it right. This one I enjoyed. Even though the first stage, again, starts on the Death Star attack from the first movie, it was enjoyable. Super Monkey Ball. I've played some Monkey Balls again in the past. Maybe just one. I can't really play them for long. It's not really my type of game. But I just tried out the beginner setting, and I think it was like a stage 9 where I thought was a little bit much for being called the beginner level setting. Because not only was it a little bit difficult, it also, when you're working against the clock, that also adds more pressure. So you can't just take your time. You have to still do it in a relatively fast amount of time to beat the stage. And so here they got some screenshots for Universal Studios Theme Park Creation. So that's kind of interesting, because as far as I know, this game never came out. It came out as Universal Studios Theme Parks Adventure. So it sounds, based on this title, that maybe you got to create the theme parks, but and then changed to just kind of an experience, which apparently was a horrible experience if you've ever seen the Angry Video Game Nerds video on it, where you just go around and pick up garbage to get on the rides and then collect stamps. And when I was reading up on this as well, it said it remained NGC Magazine UK's lowest rated game until it was surpassed by Batman Dark Tomorrow. So I thought that was kind of funny that two of the worst GameCube games were mentioned within the same sentence of each other. Yeah, it was just elsewhere on the show floor. Kemco had video running of 2 Game Point. So did they make both of them? And so yes, I just looked it up, and they were both published by Kemco, but only Batman Dark Tomorrow was developed by them. So way to go, Kemco. Now we go on to the Game Boy Advance. So I played a bit of this one here, and this was my second experience playing a side-scrolling 2D Metroid game, because I did try a bit of the very original one, the NES version, and I liked this one better. But oh my goodness, it starts off with so much text, and you can't skip it. I get it. Games try to make an interesting story and stuff, but they should always make it skippable, especially if you don't care. It was, from what I played, it was fun. You know, you just jump around, shoot stuff, and then you gotta follow the map to get to where you need to go next. get upgrades and stuff. Yes, I would play that some more. Wario Land 4. It's not your typical Mario game because it's not a Mario game. I think this is the first time I've ever played. Like, you're looking at this is a Mario Universe character, Wario, and it's 2D side scroller. But yeah, it does not play like a normal Mario game. You know, you got a shoulder charge and everything like that, and you got these disgusting boss enemies. Like, you should see the first stage boss once you hit him enough times. Man, freak show. But yes, this one was also a game I would play more. Advance Wars. I'd say that's like a cutesified turn-based strategy game. There's a lot of training if you want to do it, but you don't have to do the training. But, you know, if you really want to understand all the dynamics of the game. The maps are pretty small though, but you can choose from like 2 to 4 player maps. Like this right here, this is basically, you'd think this is just a section of the map, but no, that's pretty much the whole map that you fight on. You know, I was surprised when I was trying to move down, when I was playing a random map and I was trying to move down more to see how big it was, and I couldn't move the edges of the map. I was like, what? This is the whole thing? And there doesn't seem to be a story mode, I don't think. It just seems to be a lot of different maps you can play as different characters, and just like versus modes against other players or the computer. And there does seem to be a lot of maps though to play. If I was looking for a simplified handheld turn-based strategy game, yeah, I mean, it seems like something that could be fun. And I think if I spent more time with it, yeah, I think I would like it a lot more. I liked playing Sonic the Hedgehog Advance. It was kind of, you know, your normal 2D side-scrolling Sonic game, but you could also play as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. I never played as Amy before in like a 2D side scroller, so that was fun because she wields her hammer. So the thing about that though is that, you know, like when you're Sonic, you normally just jump and you're already in attack, you're in a spiked ball. But with Amy, she doesn't do that. So not only do you have to jump, but then you have to hit the other button to then attack. If you've played a lot of Sonic games, that's not normal. It's not natural. But I do like it, and I would like to play it some more. This one was canceled. Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers. Diddy Kong Pilot was also canceled. I played Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. It seems, you know, like a normal kind of collectathon like a Banjo-Kazooie. But Kazooie gets captured right away off the bat by Mecha Grunty and takes Kazooie to the past. So then with the help of your voodoo guy, shaman face, he also then sends you to the past to go save her. But yeah, you don't have any attacks involving Kazooie anymore. In fact, that's the thing, is you can't even attack right off the bat. I was like, okay, how am I supposed to hit these enemies? And it's not until you go to the past when you're talking to one of the mole ancestors that he now grants you the ability to swing your backpack. So the backpack that you were wearing before you even came to the past, now you can use it as a weapon because he's allowed it. You know, but the whole game, it just feels like a less 3D version of Banjo-Kazooie. So, you know, if you enjoyed that game, then you'll probably like that one too. This one was weird, Sabre Wulf. When I looked at the artwork and everything, I was expecting it to be really bad. And actually, now that I look at this is spelt wrong. It's supposed to be W-U-L-F. But that's the thing, and once I loaded it up, I realized I saw it was a Rare game. So I was like, oh, that immediately made it seem like it had a chance. And then the name struck a bell with me, thinking of Sabre Wulf, especially spelt that way. And I went and checked it out. And yes, it's on the Rare Replay. Sabre Wulf was an old series of theirs from like the 1980s. And so I decided to play that one. And yeah, it's terrible. It's so ridiculously hard. You barely have a chance to survive before the game's over. It's just like, oof, I don't know. I don't know how anyone would find that game fun. It's just kind of like this weird maze that you're supposed to find stuff, and there's constantly respawning animals. And you have an attack, like a sword attack or something, to fight them off, but you can get hit so quick and everything's so fast. You get 4 lives and you can fly through them like, boom, they're just gone like that and the game's over. So I would not recommend that one. This one, though, was a lot more fun and way different. I also thought that based on the name of the game, I thought you were going to be playing as the wolf. But no, you're playing as this guy here. This little kind of adventure explorer guy. Klonoa, here's an ad for Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil. I played this on the Switch, the one that came out that was on all the platforms. Speaking of cross-platform games, Nintendo, Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, and yeah, awesome. Klonoa games 1 and 2, great games. I would highly recommend them. And that's the thing, nobody knows what this guy is. It kind of reminds me of Animaniacs, where nobody was really quite sure what the creature was. It's even black and white, like them. Or, wait. Well, they were black. I'm not sure if they had any white on them. Yeah, I think their faces had white on them. You know what? I'm just going to load up JPEGs or something, images of comparing the two of them. And so now we're into the Xbox section. So here they have best in show, best Xbox game was Oddworld Munch's Odyssey. Say Jet Grind Radio Future, Dead or Alive 3, and Halo were all impressive, but our favorite Xbox game is still Munch's Odyssey. I'm like, really? That's probably my least favorite of the four mentioned there. And not just probably, it is. And then so down here we got the Microsoft's VP of Games Publishing, Ed Fries, saying, Sony doesn't even have that many first-party titles in its year 2. I'm going to launch with at least half a dozen first-party games, and I mean big ones. Sony launched with what? Fantavision? Ooh, snap! And then over here he talks about Nintendo. He's like, Nintendo's going to do some great games. They always have. And they have Miyamoto, who is great. But it takes more than a few great games to win the console war. It takes a steady stream of great first-party and third-party games. Nintendo, they didn't show a single third-party game at their press conference. And what does that say about their support from the third parties? So he's throwing shade left and right. Then over here on this page, EGM is talking about that Microsoft still has to worry about the other thorn in its side, lack of Japanese support. And right now the company's first-party Japanese development offices are cruising along just fine with 100 developers and 12 projects in the works. None for the system's US launch. And that's the kind of thing you don't really think about when you're thinking about or talking about Xbox. I just never really occurs to me. Is like, as GameSack would put it, games left in Japan. You know, because, you know, there's a lot of exclusives or games that stayed in Japan for like so many of the older consoles and the ones made by like Sony and Nintendo and Sega. But I just never really thought about it or hear about it when it comes to Xbox. Because, you know, it is Microsoft, it is an American company. So like all the rest of those ones I mentioned, they're all Japanese based. So it makes sense that there's a lot, it makes more sense that there's a lot more Japanese titles that stayed over there, that they didn't bother translating or sending out over here because of cultural differences or something. So yeah, it does. That's something I would like to look into, and maybe that could be a new video series, is looking at two Xbox games that were Japanese exclusives. And so like down here they have like Tecmo, who's making Dead or Alive 3, and then Sega's got announced 11 games. And then over here they're talking about Capcom, which was going to release Genma Onimusha, Dino Crisis 3, and a robot simulation codenamed Brainbox from Resident Evil producer Shinji Mikami. And the thing was, I tried to look up whatever this robot simulation game was, because something did occur to me that I had heard of before. So I looked it up, and there was a Japanese exclusive game that was like a robot simulation game called NUDE, AT. So it was an acronym that stood for Natural Ultimate Digital Experience. But the thing is, when I looked it up, it wasn't made by Capcom. So, I mean, I can only assume that it was canceled then, unless I just couldn't figure out what they eventually turned that game into. Or did they sell it over to the actual developer to continue the game? I don't know. But I do wonder what that game was. Codename Brainbox. So they start, it's kind of funny with them going on about Oddworld and all that stuff, why they didn't cover that one first. But here we got Halo, and you know, what's there to say? It was revolutionized first-person shooters, and it became a massive success that still lives on to this day. But the thing is, yeah, the kind of enthusiasm just isn't there anymore after like 20 years. Kind of sad, but other franchises can still kind of keep up you get people fired up and interested. And even when Halo Infinite came out, like I said, I was a big Halo guy. I wasn't that excited. I mean, I was happy to hear there was a new Halo game, but I just wasn't excited about it. And, but I guess I was not that excited for Halo 5 either. But, that turned out to be, to me anyway, I remember it being, I should play it again, but I thought it was a pretty good game. I liked it more than Halo 4. But yeah, it just doesn't have the same wow factor that it used to. But wow, back then, what a game. Like I've said several times in these read-throughs, it's what made me an Xbox guy. And then they got Jet Grind Radio Future. I'm not sure if this is just a port of, what was it, Jet Set? Oh, wait a minute, didn't this end up becoming Jet Set Radio Future? I'm going to look that up. Pause. Yeah, so this was renamed for the Xbox Jet Set Radio Future. And I guess it was a reimagining of the game for the Dreamcast, from what I've read on Wikipedia. But the game, it kind of reminds me of a kind of Tony Hawk or Sunset Overdrive, mostly because of the grinding. But the one thing I thought was really weird was that you can grind up vertical posts. I've never seen that before. Based on what I played, there's also an element of spray painting graffiti at designated places, which is kind of funny because the game opens up with a warning condemning graffiti and how it's illegal. Imagine if all games started off that way. Like, did the Grand Theft Auto games start with a warning to tell you not to do all the things in the game? So, like, the first real mission in the game is to tag 16 spots to draw out another gang who has been spreading rumors about your gang. And then when you draw them out, or draw the guy out, he grinds on a rail and then through a window, shattering it. And then so you're supposed to do the same thing. And I guess you have to do the exact same thing because the window is somehow back up there, and then you shatter it too. It's the same window. Here we got Medal of Honor Allied Assault. Like here it says, the screen here is from the PC version, but we're told it will look the same on Xbox. I'll tell you right now it doesn't, because it never came out for the Xbox. Oddworld, their most precious favorite game ever, Munch's Odyssey. I didn't really get to play much of this, so I will abstain from giving my opinion. Dead or Alive 3. So yeah, Dead or Alive is probably my favorite fighting series, at least in terms of 3D fighting games. And for no other reason than they're great fighting games. I only play them for the gameplay. Just ignore all this stuff on screen. It's just there to distract you from the point I'm making, whatever it was. I don't have a lot of notable stories about how I got my games, but this one always sticks out in my head, because I paid $80 for it used at an EB Games when the new price was $85. $84.99 seems like a really weird price point, but I remember paying $80 for it and that it was only $5 off, and that I only realized what a ripoff that was after I left the store. So I might be misremembering things, but that's how I remember it. But in terms of overall fighting games, Street Fighter probably takes the top spot just by like maybe a hair. I don't know, it's hard to tell. But then, yeah, Dead or Alive would be next, if it's not first. I don't know. It's one or two. And this game here, it has, very beautiful graphics, especially for the time. And it's still good today. But, I mean, it's kind of funny when you look back on these things, how back then I thought they looked so incredible. Like the character faces and stuff were so amazing for the time. And now when I look at them, especially when I compare them to like DOA 6, I mean, they're still really good, but especially when it comes to Kasumi, her eyes are they seem so much bigger than everyone else's that she seems a little almost cartoony. So yeah, every time you go through the story mode, for each character, you get a different cutscene. And the thing is, I realized though that the cutscene graphics don't seem as good as the in-game graphics, which especially for this time was when they started doing these types of CG cutscenes, the CG cutscenes always looked better than the in-game graphics. Like just go to Final Fantasy VII. But I thought the in-game the CG graphics, they just didn't look as good. Especially some of the like extra characters, their bodies just looked clunky and not graceful. They didn't look right. But some of these cutscenes, I tell you, too spicy for YouTube. But speaking of the endings, first you have to beat the final boss to get your ending. And he is super lame, because the thing is, they put you on this ridiculous, like, isometric angle, I believe. So it's hard to gauge when you're right in front of him to reach your attack against, like to be able to know if you're within punching or kicking range. I kept running at him, thinking I was within range, and I'd start kicking and punching, and he's not even blocking, he's not even, I'm not hitting him. So because of the angle, I couldn't tell if I was close enough to hit him. And the guy, he's got projectiles, which some of them, like, you can block, but he does this, like, fire wave, which I don't still know really. I don't even know if you can, outside of maybe sidestepping like crazy to get out of the way. But even when you knock him over, if you don't block and brace for the impact, he hits the ground and a wave shoots out that if you're not ready for it, you get hurt and get knocked over. It's just a really super cheap, stupid boss. Fortunately, you don't have to hit him that much for his health to drain, but it's just really terrible boss. Also, it mentions down here, the soundtrack will reportedly feature big-name artists, though Tecmo hasn't announced specifics yet. And I don't know about artists, but there was one, which was Aerosmith. And apparently they did 3 songs for the game. This was Project Eco, also really known as Fable. It says here that you start out as a 15-year-old boy or girl whose family was murdered, and you grow to about 80 in-game years. I'm pretty sure I've beaten this game before, and I don't remember getting that old. So maybe I didn't beat it, or maybe they took that part out. But I do know that this game has a lot of like decision-making outcomes, because you kind of either you become like a hero or a villain based on your decisions, if they're good or evil, and that'll affect your appearance. So I wonder if maybe there's an option that you can take that makes you 80 years old. I don't remember. Yeah, I enjoyed it back in the day, and I still have to play 2 and 3. Gunvalkyrie. Played that on the Xbox One because it's one of the backwards compatible games. I think there's something here. The music and gameplay remind us a bit of Panzer Dragoon, Saw the Dragon. And I did not get that feel at all playing Gunvalkyrie, because Panzer Dragoon, I think I've played Orda. Yeah, I played Orda on the Xbox, and I've played the remake on the Switch. And it's a rail shooter. You just go the course that they set for you. Where Gunvalkyrie, you go back and forth. It's a third-person shooter game. Yeah, you have like a jetpack, but again, there's nothing about this that feels like Panzer Dragoon. Maybe the music. I mean, it is a Sega game, but not the. And again, I can't really compare. I don't know. I don't remember the music from Panzer Dragoon or from Gunvalkyrie. But the gameplay-wise, no, I would never make that comparison. Not in a million years, and you can't make me. Cel Damage. When I was looking at this, what do they describe it here as think Twisted Metal meets the cel-shaded cartoon world of the Dreamcast wacky races. And yeah, I kind of had this feeling that it was just going to be a cartoony Twisted Metal, and yeah, that's what it basically was. But the thing was, I mean, Twisted Metal Black, I will be covering later when we get to the review section. Probably liked this better. Had a pretty funny opening, like one of those TV dramas, like This Week on Cel Damage, and it was kind of silly stuff. But the thing was, the first stage I played, it was just ridiculous. Like, it was like one-hit kills, and it wasn't until much later into the match that I realized where the power-ups was, so that I could have the frost weapons and the chainsaw too. But again, with basically the one-hit kills, it seemed kind of cheap and, hard to get a groove. But then the second stage, the weapons I picked a different stage, and the weapons in that seemed a little more balanced. Like, it wasn't like one-hit kills. So that made it more fun because you just weren't constantly respawning all the time. Unreal Championship, I thought that was pretty good, especially for its day. Good, you got good control of your character. It's pretty simple first-person shooter, but it's just like arena stuff. It's just and that's the thing. I think it was designed to be a multiplayer shooter. Just like I think like those Quake games, right? It was just pretty much player versus player, just frag fest. There's no story mode in this one. Unreal 2 does have a story, but again, the story, it's not like linear stages where you're going from point A to point B. You're just always in a tournament, as far as I've played in Unreal 2 or Unreal Championship 2. And there are a ton of characters to pick from, and there's a whole bunch of different teams, and so you can play against bots and everything. But like I said, I think this was to be set up for the online multiplayer. And over here it says at least 1,000 polygons were used to build a single weapon, and 2,500 to 3,000 for each character, not including a separate count for faces. So yeah, it's the thing. I was like, even just looking at this screenshot, it's like, yeah, you see how detailed that is. There you go. Like, this is Xbox. So that's really good. And I figured they must be impressed too, because normally you don't tell companies don't talk about how many polygons were used for designing this and that. Mad Dash Racing. I was expecting that to really, really suck, but it was surprisingly fun. It's a game I'd like to go back to and try some more. I only did one race, but I thought it would, like I said, I was pretty impressed with it that I want to play it more. And it's a game, instead of like a kart race or in a vehicle or anything, you're just running as your character. And there's a whole bunch of weapons and obstacles. And it seemed like at first I couldn't really tell, because you see here there's the bar of how far you are along the track, and it seemed like I was doing laps at first, and maybe I wasn't, but eventually the stage changed. So maybe it was just areas seemed similar. Like, I thought I kept crossing the finish line or the starting line over. I'm pretty sure I crossed it several times. So I thought I was just doing laps, but that's the thing, is maybe the laps changed, because I've played a game like that. Oh yeah, Sonic and Sega Racing Transform, whatever. Like, the laps change so that you're not always doing the same thing each lap, which it kind of helps make it less repetitive. That's kind of cool. And here they said it's got where did they put it? You're going to hear lots of comparisons between this game and Running Wild and Pen Trill Salon. They are the first game. The first has animals racing around. The second one features very long tracks that you race through only once. Both kind of sucked. I don't think this one sucks at all, but I only played one course, but I don't know. Could it suck later? I don't know. Shrek, based off the movie called Shrek. Didn't really get enough time to play this. Star Wars Obi-Wan. This one also had some decent controls and force abilities. The thing is, it's also, you can do these flips in any direction, and it's actually really addictive. That it's just fun to hit the flip button over and over and over and over and over again. And honestly, I think I played 2 stages of this, and I found it more fun than Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I didn't really care for that game. This is the game to play. But it did take me till about the end of the first stage to figure out how to use the force powers properly, because you have your buttons that do all the things. The buttons will all do one thing, but then when you hold the left trigger, that's how to activate your force powers, and then you'll do like a force jump or a force push or throw your lightsaber. The thing is, though, they don't tell you that when you're playing in the first stage, at least not that I saw. So I kind of just had to figure it out for myself on how to do all this stuff, because I had to move this giant boulder out of the way of this train, and I just kept kind of bumping into it, but I couldn't get it over the tracks until I finally realized that holding the left trigger activates, because I could do the force jump, the force lightsaber throw, and then when I hit the B button, which was, I think it was the B button, which was the flip button, it does force pushing when you're holding down the left trigger. So I was finally able to force push the boulder out of the way, or the wreckage. And there was some the game is voice acted. The one for Qui-Gon, his voice seemed okay, but Obi-Wan, the guy who did his voice, it just sounded like some guy. It was just like trying to be like, Ewan McGregor, I'm Obi-Wan. Honestly, I don't even know if that was close. That's just how I kind of remember it. It was just a weird sounding Ewan McGregor. There's also a Jedi battle mode, and as you go through the stages and stuff, you can unlock more Jedi to play with. And after I beat the robot that I was training against in the second stage, I unlocked Deepa Billaba. That's right, Deepa Billaba. You know, the thing is, like, I'm not expecting to unlock, like, Mace Windu or Yoda right off the bat, but Deepa Billaba? Like, why not somebody like Plo Koon or Ayla Secura or Shag T or something? I mean, I didn't even know that was a character. It's not a perfect Jedi game by any means, but I was enjoying it for what it was. Over here, they got an ad for Konami Crazy Racers, and this one was like, I wanted to test it out. I like Goemon, and the graphics and stuff look chibi and stuff, so it looked really cute. And yeah, it's basically, it reminded me of playing Mario Kart Super Circuit on the Game Boy Advance. So if you like that one, you'll probably like Konami Crazy Racers as well. Project Gotham Racing, I wasn't able to really get to play that, so we'll not comment on that one. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 X. Sounds like just an updated version of the original Pro Skater 2. Yeah, because it's complete with all the levels from the first game, plus 3 new skate parks. I remember playing the very first Tony Hawk, and I remember enjoying that a lot, but it just didn't hook me like the first game did. Air Force Delta Storm, didn't get to play a lot of this, but it did remind me of Ace Combat 7, and I hated that game. Yeah, hyper realistic. Yeah, I just found it it's a flight combat like simulator or something. Just I don't know, I find them kind of boring. And here they say the biggest E3 disappointment, Xbox. That's just rude. It's not that the Xbox sucked at E3. After all, we got to see some cool games, but the games didn't wow us like Microsoft wanted them to. I'm sorry, did you not see Halo or DOA 3? They better get some killer apps in the lineup, like, I don't know, Halo or DOA 3? How about some broadband Phantasy Star Online? Everyone else is doing it. Oh, and fix your controller too. Those face buttons are too close together. Oh, sorry, I can't even see what I'm reading here. Yes, they did release the S-Type, which was the Japanese controller. Because we had the Duke in North America, and then they eventually released the S-Type, which I guess was the one that they released in Japan. I was actually a fan of the Duke, but eventually I switched over to the S-Type. Oh, I flipped over to the Sony PlayStation 2 section without even noticing. Here it is, PlayStation 2. So it's interesting here that earlier when I was talking about all the peripherals that they were releasing for this, how it felt like a computer or something. Not sure who this is speaking. HerE, I guess that's his name. Says, but what it's becoming is more of a computer entertainment system. We've always said the PS2 is a computer entertainment system. It's a natural progression and our evolution of the PlayStation 2 experience. Our alliance with AOL, for example. But that's the thing is, I've never heard that the PlayStation 2 was a computer entertainment system. Like, I never heard it referred to that, and I definitely don't think of it that way. I mean, I didn't have a PlayStation 2. I had a friend who had one, and I don't think that's what anyone really considers it. So Jak and Daxter, they compare it somewhere here to Mario 64, and from what I've played, I did not get that feeling. I mean, looking at the screenshots too, it doesn't look like anything like a Mario 64. But yeah, when I was playing it, it seems a fun game, and I have the collection, the trilogy collection for the PS3, so that's what I was playing. But I did not get the Mario 64 feel. But yeah, it seemed enjoyable. The only thing was that Daxter, Yeah, he talks a lot, and I like the voice acting. He seems like a funny character. But I just realized that, like, I don't think Jak talks at all, because Daxter does all the talking when people are talking to Jak. I haven't heard him say a word yet. So the thing is, I know he talks in a later game. And up here they got Maximo Ghosts of Glory. And what I was playing from this, yeah, like right at the beginning of the game, because I covered the sequel, Maximo versus the Zin Army or something, or Army of Zin, and I was saying how Death's one of the playable characters, or that he's your buddy in it. You can switch as him for brief moments of time. And I was like, I guess maybe he's connected to him from the first game, because it feels like yeah, they clearly know each other. And yeah, pretty much at the start of this game, there's a Death comes into it and teams up with Maximo again, or something like that. So yeah, he's part of the series. But I finally got the answer from that PSM read through. And here they compare it a lot to Ghosts and Goblins, like an homage to Ghosts and Goblins and stuff like that, which, again, it is made by Capcom. And you got, like, the boxers, when he's taking hits, he gets into his boxers just like Arthur did. And, like, I think I said in the, I might have said it in the other one, or maybe it was this one. Yeah, I think, you know what? No, it was this game, yeah. The music, it had a very, I haven't played a lot of Ghosts and Goblins, but it just, from what I've seen, watching other YouTubers play or cover the game, the music reminded me of it a lot. And I did enjoy what I played of it, and I would like to play it some more, but there was some things that I wouldn't mind a better camera, actually. Because it works fine when it's in front of you, but if you want to, like, turn around and backtrack, you kind of, like, have to, you can't just run, like, if you run towards the camera, it'll just show you running towards the camera, so you can't see what you're running towards. You have to, like, run to the side so that it gradually turns around and follows you. And there's also this ghost that, I don't know, he runs into you. There's these like, blue things that I've been collecting, and then when the ghost flies into you, those blue things, they get thrown out of your body, so you have to collect them again before they disappear. I don't know what those blue things do, first of all, but I am collecting them for a reason, I'm sure. But I don't know how to stop that ghost from doing it, because I can't seem to attack him. But yeah, like I said, I still would like to play more of it, though. SSS Tricky reminded me a lot of playing SSX3. I can't really say which one, if this one's better than 3 or which one came out first, but, I'd have to play both of them more to figure that out. Final Fantasy X. I beat this game maybe like 2 years ago on the Xbox One, and yeah, it was okay. I have a friend who absolutely loves this game, and he's beaten it like multiple times. It's not really a game that I would want to play through again, really. If I had an endless amount of time in the world, then sure, maybe, but just I got too many other games to play right now that I don't want to go back to play a long game that I thought was okay, just okay. And that's the thing. I wonder if, maybe it seemed a little overhyped to me because, I remember this being a big deal back in the day, and I didn't play it till, like I said, just like 2 years ago. So I had all this high expectations for it, but I don't know. I don't think I had high expectations. I think they pretty much lived up to what I was expecting. But it's kind of funny reading what they're talking about it here, where they say like something about breathtaking. The summons and special effects are nothing short of breathtaking. All right, sure. Then they also mention here that because the video is now running at full 30 frames per second at DVD quality, and it's just kind of funny, like the standards, how they change, how technology gets better over time, that it's like, wow, it's running at DVD quality? Woo! But yes, I'm sure for back then that was good, because Blu-ray still was like 5 years away. Kingdom Hearts, I started playing that on, I have it for the Xbox One as well. Started playing it a couple of years ago. That's the thing that always, when I think about it, I can't believe how old that series is, because something about it just feels like it's still brand new. And I really love the artwork style of the characters, and it's a game I'd like to play a lot more of, because I have the 2 collections and number 3, like the remix for 1 and 2, and then so it has also, like, I think a couple of the side spin-off games, and then 3. So I have a lot to play of it. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, I'll just kind of go with my comments about X2 or 2X, where it's just, it seems fine. It didn't hook me like the first game did, but it might have been a different mentality back then, because I was really everyone was playing that back then, and I'm playing this like 20 years later, and I don't really care, so that might have played a part into it as well. So Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, I'm not a big racing guy in the first place, but I especially don't like simulation racers. I even selected the arcade mode, and it was still kind of slippery, I just never driven cars in real life that have so loose controls, so I prefer the kart racers and arcade racers So here's Devil May Cry, the first one. The first one I played was Devil May Cry 4. I think I played it on Game Pass. So it was like the game wasn't exactly clear on what to do, but it was not that hard to figure out. The combat isn't too bad. I'm assuming you're going to learn a lot more moves as the game goes on. And I'm not the biggest Resident Evil guy, but there was a Resident Evil feel to this when I was playing it, which makes sense because it says here that it was originally... The director of the game was working on what was originally supposed to be a Resident Evil 4, but the game became so different from Resident Evil, we changed the name to Devil May Cry. So that might explain why it had that feeling. It had a similar design layout and atmosphere and camera. One thing that I thought was weird, though, was that you can't fall off of stuff. You have to, like, jump down, which in a way is nice, that you can't just accidentally slip off of something. But it also is weird. I don't really remember a lot of games like that where if you run to an edge of something, you just don't fall off. You have to specifically hit the button to do that. But yeah, it seemed like a decent game. This Ico, which is actually pronounced Eco according to this write-up here, that one was okay. You know, there's no music in it. And there was a long, kind of boring intro that I eventually skipped. So I don't really know what the story is. But you're just in this big castle, and as I'm running through trying to figure out what to do, I find a girl in a cage, and I was able to lower the cage. Like, that was the thing. There's moments where I almost felt like giving up because I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, but I eventually then kept figuring out what to do next. And the thing was, I got all the way to the part where I lowered the girl in the cage, but she's still, you know, a few feet off the ground, and that's the point where I'm just not sure what to do. But the one thing about this game is that it has a very interesting camera. It almost feels like it's a cameraman like following you from a distance or from across the room, the way the camera works. It's I can't really think of, maybe I just never really noticed it in any other games, but it stood out a lot more in this game than games I played before. Tenchu 3 was called Tenchu Wrath of Heaven, which is funny because from what I've read, Tenchu means Wrath of Heaven. So was it Wrath of Heaven, Wrath of Heaven? But that could be wrong. And so at the beginning of the game, you can start off as a guy or a girl. So there's, for those who've never played the Tenchu games before, it's like a stealth ninja game. And you can do stealth one-hit kills. Because otherwise, if the samurai see you, you know, you end up in a kind of a sword fight. And, you know, they're better at sword fights than you are. Or it's definitely harder to hit them than if you just sneak up on them. So yeah, it's not a game that it's not a good game for honor or fighting fair. One thing I will say though about it is it feels like sometimes the camera's fighting you. It could use a little bit of camera work, better camera work. But I think of all the new games that I've played for this issue, I think this is the one that I wanted to play more of. So over here they got primed for online. So they're talking about the games that are going to be ready for online play for the PlayStation 2, I guess in November when the adapter comes out. So they got SOCOM US Navy SEALs, Twisted Metal Online, Tribes 2, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. And of all these games here, Tony Hawk is the one that kind of stands out as why would you need to play that online, especially because I think they say you can play with 7 of your friends. Maybe not here, but maybe it was in the review over here. Nope, not there. So maybe I misread that somewhere, but yeah, that's the one game I don't understand how you play that multiplayer or online. So Spider-Man, the movie, the game, I played on the Xbox. And when you start off, it asks you if you want classic or enhanced controls, but it doesn't give you an example of which does what. Classic compared to what other game? This is Spider-Man, the movie. It's based off the movie, so there's nothing before it. So I'm assuming it must be based off previous Spider-Man games and, you know, that, I guess, Treyarch developed. And it's kind of funny because when you're zipping through the city, you're not attached to building. Like right here, you can see right here, his web is straight up. He's attached to this guy. It's kind of weird how you can just climb up and climb down like while you're swinging. You can control how high and low you are. The swinging and stuff and the controls work really well. Surprisingly, because I'm pretty sure I've beaten this game before, so it worked a lot better than I thought it would going back to such an old game. And the zip line too, like, works really well when you just want to zip straight to a ceiling or something like that. And so when you're starting off the game, there's a whole bunch of question marks all over the place, and when you get to them, you know, it's like it's a tutorial to tell you how to do that part right there that you need to do. And the funny thing is, it's voiced by Bruce Campbell, which he was in the movie as the wrestling announcer guy. So when you find the first question mark, Bruce Campbell starts to explain what you have to do, but then he's like chirps you, I guess, because there's a point where you could have taken a tutorial, but I just skipped the tutorial just to go to the game. And I think he says something along the lines of, but you would have known that if you had taken the tutorial. So he chirps you for skipping it, which I thought was pretty funny. The biggest problem I had was like the camera. It's like when you start heading towards the camera, it's like your controls get messed up as it tries to reorient itself. It can messes up the direction you're running and it gets pretty annoying, but outside of that, it was not bad. So Virtua Fighter 4, I think I did Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution in the PSM read-through, and this time I understood it a little bit more. This time when I was playing it kind of reminded me of DOA, Dead or Alive, except less interesting or fun. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I just did not enjoy it as much. And the combat, I think, works pretty well. There was a block button, which, again, I'm not used to a lot of games having fighting games having block buttons. I know, like, I guess Soul Calibur does, yeah. But I'm so used to, even like in DOA, you just hit the back button and you'll block. I think there was about 13 characters to choose from, which isn't a bad selection for a 3D fighting game, especially back then. But a lot of the characters seemed kind of generic. There weren't a lot of standouts. And I ended up choosing Pi. I think her name is Pi, or that's how you pronounce it, because she is a DOA alumni, which makes the game cooler. Star Wars Racer's Revenge. I don't know if I ever heard about this game back in the day. It says it's set 8 years after the. It's set 8 years after the N64 Dreamcast PC original, which would explain why at the character select screen, Anakin looks like he does in Attack of the Clones. He looks like the Hayden Christensen as a Padawan. And yeah, it's a fine racing game. It reminded me a lot of the original one. I think I only played one race or two. Yeah, I think if you liked the first one, I think you'll like this one. It has boosts and repairing and stuff. You gotta be careful though. You can't push your engines too far. There's this bar here, and if it goes up and it starts beeping for too long, one of your engines will blow and you'll spin out and die, or the race will end for you and you lose. Silent Hill 2, I've never played that or any Silent Hill game. Dead to Rights. So yeah, I played a bit of this, and it is super cheesy. The story and the dialogue as well. I was thinking it feels like a Max Payne ripoff with the slow motion everything, diving, and it says, yeah, isn't there a similar game heading for PS2? And it says, yep, Rockstar's Max Payne. Now it's a race to see which John Woo inspired game hits the PS2 first. And I'm not sure which one did come out first, but I did like Max Payne a lot more than what I was playing of this. Because the thing is, like, you're supposed to be a cop, right? And so the first thing is you start the game, you go to some sort of construction site because of whatever. I'm not sure what the call was, why you ended up going there. But you get there, and so all these guys, I guess, are not really construction workers, and they all have guns. And so there's this thing where you can use a human shield. And I guess at the point when you're done using the person as a human shield, you just, like, knock him to his knees and then shoot him in the head. Execution style. I'm like, that is straight up murder. That is not what a cop would do. So it makes me feel pretty sleazy being this guy. I'm supposed to be a cop. I'm supposed to be doing what's right, and you just execute a guy after using him as a human shield. There's also moments where you get to play as the dog to like activate things or whatever. And then the second stage, you play as a stripper, and it's really funny because I'm sure back in the day I thought it probably looked really good, but looking at now, it's just like the proportions of the body, like the way it's designed, it doesn't look right, and it just feels really silly. But it was kind of humorous, because you're supposed to hit all the buttons to distract the bouncers and stuff so that the cop can sneak around them to get to whoever it is he's supposed to try to talk to. But it's surprisingly difficult. Or maybe I was just distracted by all those hot moves. Wipeout Fusion is a futuristic combat racer. I thought it was pretty entertaining for what I played of it. It kind of reminded me of Extreme G from the the N64, except for that you're like on like a hovercraft instead of like futuristic motorcycles. The thing is though, you do have shields because you do take damage, and once your shields are out, boom, that's it. It's just like episode The Racer here, that there's no respawn, your race is over once that happens. Capcom versus SNK 2. Always been a fan of the Capcom games, fighting games, and I've been recently getting more into King of Fighters and stuff like that. So Capcom versus SNK 2, it was fun, and you can't go wrong with any game that has Mai in it. There are a lot of different options to select from, like modes and like styles that you fight with. One of my big problems though is that there's a timer for selecting your character and your modes and stuff. Now I understand like in the arcade why that's kind of necessary, but with the home port I just don't get that. They should have removed it, especially because there's a lot to select from. But saying that, again, with all the different modes, it was a little over my head. Sometimes games can get a little too complicated for their own good. I just wanted to get into pick some characters and fight. And over here at the talk with the president of Capcom offshoot flagship, Yoshiki Yokamoto. They're asking why fighting games aren't as popular as they used to be, and he says he thinks there's a lot of reasons and that Capcom and SNK are to blame. He says, we released so many games in such a short time when they should have been spaced out properly like a year apart. But we, Capcom and SNK, released games with only a 2 or 3 month interval. I didn't realize that they came out so fast. The gamers had no clue which games they should master. I don't think it's because the games got boring. And so he says, so is Street Fighter 4 being worked on? And he said, before doing Street Fighter 4, we have to develop Street Fighter 3 Dash Turbo X and others. So there's a long way to go before SF4. And I don't know if he's joking, because, you know, there are so many different versions of like Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 3 and Street Fighter Alpha and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if he was just making a glib remark here, or if that was actually the working title at the time, Dash Turbo X. There's also this thing here about the Capcom game 1942, where I don't think I've ever played one of those 1941, 1942 games, and I believe you play as an American aircraft, and you're going after the Japanese Navy and Air Force, and so you're shooting down their planes and stuff. So it says here, we hear after 1942 came out, you got involved in some trouble. Tell us about it. And he's like, yes, there was a problem. Think about it. What if someone in the U.S. made a video game about the Viet Cong beating the hell out of the Americans? It wasn't that much of a problem in Japan, though, and I didn't care what people said about it. But yeah, it is that is a weird thing to do for it. It's one thing if an American company made that game, but a Japanese company, having the Americans shoot down your own people, it's kind of weird, and it feels like that wouldn't go over well with the public. But I mean, I think they kept making those games, so they must have kept buying them. Time Crisis 2, I wasn't able to play that. I don't have a gun con, but apparently based on what they said here, that you can use your controller as well, but I wasn't able to play that. But I think the Time Crisis games are pretty decent for those shooters. And so down here they have PS2 sleepers. They have, the ones that they think are going to be hits, and then they have all the games here that they think are going to be sleeper hits. This game drop shipped. I was surprised. I looked it all up because I had a feeling that some of these would be canceled, but in fact none of them were canceled. It was only this one and this one that had some name changes. This one's Dropship United Peace Force, and this one is still Guitaro Man, or Guitaro Man, because there's no U. But yes, they all came out, and I was surprised by that. So now we go to the PlayStation 1. When I was initially writing down the list of games to play, I didn't even realize this was Syphon Filter 3. I thought it was the first one, so I ended up playing the first one, and it was only after when I was rereading this magazine that I realized it was number 3 and I had played the wrong game. Funny thing is, though, my comments on it are almost exactly the same. The game opens up with like a cut scene, and you just get thrown into this story, and it just very quickly, tries to bring you up to speed. And they do a really bad job of setting up scenes. And it doesn't help that a lot of the voice acting is pretty bad. So, and I think the first one as well had the similar issues. So they didn't get better as they made these games in terms of cheesy dialogue and voice acting. I just didn't really enjoy either one. It feels like a wasted like the buttons. The button mapping was like terrible. I mean, they have the right and left triggers for strafing right and left. It feels like they didn't effectively or efficiently assign the buttons. Like the only thing, like the best way to play the game is just using the taser, because it's it's funny and it's fun. The beginning of the game starts with a thing about, were you out of country assassinating a world leader? And the lead character's like, no, I was not. And it goes, a couple weeks ago. And their very first thing is to assassinate the world leader. So I'm like, okay, I guess he's a liar. But I mean, I guess he's also an assassin. So lying seems the least of his moral flaws. So when you're fighting all these guys across the street, like they're in the buildings and the windows, yeah, I just used the taser. I was able to tase them from across the street, and it was more effective than trying to aim at them with a gun. That's the thing, is they give you a danger bar, which I've never seen in a game before, and that the bar goes up the more they shoot at you, and like when it's full, it's like, okay, you're gonna get hit soon. Because I think they understand how crappy the controls are and to aim and stuff, so they have to give you time to aim if you want, or to position yourself, because you can't just quickly shoot at them like you would in any other game. So you have this bar to warn you, okay, you're about to get hit, you better move. But one thing about that taser you got to be careful with, because the thing is, you set them on fire if you hold it long enough, but if you run past them while they're on fire, if you touch them, you can catch on fire, and then that's the end of your game as well. Honestly, the game just feels kind of clunky and cheesy, and I don't know. I just don't understand how they made so many sequels and spin-offs, but I guess you haven't made one in a really long time. Like, I think, what was 2007 the last one they made? I had heard there's ties to the other game they made a few years ago called Days Gone, but I don't know if that's official. when I was researching it was called their first original IP since Syphon Filter back in 1999, or was it 1997? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So it seemed like it was a different series, but I guess one of the creators said there are some ties between Syphon Filter and Days Gone. So I don't know if they're Easter eggs or whatnot, but it is possible that they take place in the same universe or the same world, whatever. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, that one was pretty good actually, and I was surprised how well this white man can't jump, but this little white boy can. He's climbing, he's jumping up bookshelves and everything like that. But the thing is, the game starts off, when you get to finally play it, you're just at Hogwarts after the Sorting Hat has put you into Gryffindor, and it seems kind of a weird starting point. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but they kind of rushed through the beginning of everything in like a storybook mode, like you'd see pages of a book telling the story up to that point, including the sorting, and then Dumbledore's right in front of you. And I thought he would explain to me what he wants me to do, but he didn't. I just had to kind of wander around the school until I ran into Ron, and then finally, one thing led to another, and I had to go track down Hedwig because Draco stole him, and I had to follow his feathers, going through all these rooms and jumping off all these platforms and stuff, just like he did in the movie. Dragon Warrior 7. This was the first time I ever played a Dragon Warrior game, and I never got to actually do any combat now that I think about it. I had to go on this boat here with my dad, and the character in the game is his dad, and he's like, I'm looking for something to do, and he's like, I don't know, just go downstairs and clean the cabins or something. So I'm looking through all the rooms, the floors of the ship. There's no cabins. I'm like, okay, anybody have anything for me to do? There was there was a girl hiding behind a whole bunch of barrels, but I couldn't talk to her, but I had a feeling that she was, that was the thing I was supposed to do. It probably took me like 10 minutes or so before I finally realized that I can lift the barrels. I don't know. I guess in a way it made me start to think of it more of as a Zelda game. And then because I didn't think that he'd be able to lift up these probably heavy barrels and just chuck them like they're nothing. And then yes, once I finally did that, I was able to get on with the game. But then immediately they're like, okay, the dad's like, oh, never mind, I don't want you on the boat, and he kicks you off. And then coincidentally, conveniently, the king sends a sentry or something, a messenger, to find you, and you have to go up to the castle and talk to him to go find his son. And I was like, okay, well, where's your son? So I go around the village, and there's a guy who tells me, the king's son was running through the town earlier today. I'm like, okay, well, can you tell me which direction he went at least? So that's kind of the point where I gave up. There was some really cool, one thing I will say was really cool, I was not expecting this, is that if you can rotate the camera around the whole town. So it does look like a 2D game, like it looks like this is the angle you get, but you can change the angles, and it's actually like 3D, so that's really cool. I was not expecting that. Twisted Metal Small Brawl. So this is basically just like Twisted Metal. I played Twisted Metal Black. I was going to save some, what I was going to say for Twisted Metal Black. I could probably just say here because I felt the same way about both games. Was that so this is just like Twisted Metal but using RC cars on like a playground. But the thing was, you just get in these matches, and I don't know what it is about Twisted Metal Black and Small Brawl, but it's just like I find it like it takes everyone's health. Either the weapons are super weak or their health bars are super long, and I don't think I destroyed a single vehicle while I was playing. I could try getting power-ups or using the weapons I had, and the aiming isn't great either. So I don't know. Twisted Metal I hear is a fun series and stuff, and I think I kind of enjoyed the first one way back when. But playing this one and Black, I just thought it got kind of boring, and I didn't find it very fun at all. X-Men Mutant Academy 2 is like kind of as a 2D fighter, side-scrolling, but like with 3D graphics. I didn't play much of it. I didn't really like the combat in it, but that optic blast does look really cool. So here's they say the best PlayStation game was Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. And that's the thing that's weird about this one is when you start off the game, you have Beast from the X-Men leading you around the city, giving you tutorials on how to play the game. And the thing is, this game plays exactly like the movie game. This one over here. So like the buttons and everything, it even has the same where you make this web shield for some reason, a dome around yourself, and then after a few seconds it explodes and hurts the enemies. Like, I don't know, I'd never seen it in the movie, so I don't know why he was doing it in that movie, and in that game. And I don't know if I've ever seen that in the cartoons or the comics either. So here we are at the Dreamcast section. And more praise for Phantasy Star Online. So Sega's announced earlier this year, not this year, but in the year of the magazine, so 2001. It was January 31st that they announced that they were going to discontinuing Dreamcast and we're just going to go multi-platform. So it's kind of interesting to know that this is systems like a dead man walking. That I guess they're still here. I mean, Sega's still a company, but they're just not making systems anymore. So I mean, they're not really part of the console war at this point, which is why earlier when they were talking about the console war and they referred to the three major powers, Sega was left out. But I mean, they did put the Dreamcast in one of their charts. There was some talk in the magazine that the PS2 is harder to develop for than the original PlayStation. And I think Nintendo is saying that they made their systems easier when they went to the GameCube over the N64. So they were going the right way, whereas Sony was going the wrong way. But Peter Moore has a comment here saying, when it talks about developing games for the PS2, he's like, we developed for the Saturn, you know. It can't be that much more difficult to work with than the PS2. Because that's another thing, the Saturn was known for being notoriously hard to develop games for. But it's kind of funny that if they're like talking in this magazine about how difficult it is to develop for the PS2, when you look at the total library of games for the PS2, they have 4,380 from what I've seen. And that was the most for any system, at least like the major consoles, going back probably to like the NES. It must have not been that hard to develop for when you have the most games ever on any platform. Or maybe it's just, you know, people wanted the money, so they were willing to put up with the difficulty of programming. Because, again, PS2, I think it was the first to sell over 100 million. And yes, after double checking, it is still the best-selling console of all time, with like 158 million units sold. So maybe that they were willing to put up with the difficulty because of how many people were buying it. But you know, the Wii has a reputation as being like a shovelware system where they just put on a whole bunch of junk. And it kind of makes me... But the thing is about the Wii is they only have just under 1,600 games. So it makes me wonder, with 4,300 games, how many of those are actually top quality games or just a bunch of junk as well. So Shenmue 2, you know, it's pretty popular. It's one of the most popular series on the Dreamcast. I did play a bit more than I played the first one, and it was okay for what I did play it. I thought I would lose interest in it a lot quicker. People have called it like a time-wasting simulator or something like that. And yeah, it's just not really my kind of game. So here's Propeller Arena. It's like an air combat game. They're looking forward to yelling at each other over their microphones. But they won't get the chance because the game was canceled. Bomberman Online. It's, you know, the game starts off with like this cutscene where Bomberman's underwater, you know, like you see these people training underneath a waterfall. And then he jumps out of the waterfall and he starts doing a whole bunch of karate. And I'm like, what's the point of all this? And then I start thinking, oh, wait a minute, am I going to get to do karate in this game? But no, it's just a basic, simple, you know, cookie-cutter Bomberman game from what I played of it. But I mean, I guess he does punch and kick the bombs once you get the power-ups to do so. But the thing is, I noticed here when I was reading this, it says, exactly how can Bomberman hold out as a viable franchise? Your guess is as good as ours. With more than 40 titles on 14 platforms, one would think the little bugger would have gone the way of the Ninja Turtles by now. I also didn't get that reference because, I mean, by this time, I mean, Ninja Turtles... They still had games and cartoons, but I think it's maybe in the 80s and 90s they were pumping out quite a few Ninja Turtle games. But yeah, they didn't have that many. And this is 20 years ago. So, I mean, I definitely think the Bomberman games have slowed down since in the last 20 years. But yeah, they're still going. And yeah, when you're playing the game, it's fine, but they're not reinventing the wheel. Ooga Booga, I don't know what to make of this game. You know, it just seems like some sort of weird mini-game type of game. You know, you like these it's like this, you get different kind of tribal guys wearing masks, or a girl just go around attacking each other. You know, it's a multiplayer type of game, or almost like in a weird party arena type of game. I don't know what to make of it. I didn't think it was that good though. Alien Front Online definitely just feels like an arcade port. It's just, I mean, it has to be. I think they even say something here, that something about the arcade here, or they don't. But yes, it definitely plays like an arcade game, and it's just like you either pick you want to be an alien or humans, and then you just go and you just pick which vehicle you want, and then you just start shooting each other, and you have to get a certain amount of kills, and then you move on to the next map. Pretty straightforward. It seemed okay though. So now we're in the RU experience, and see, they did the same thing with the E3 that they did over here. So here they just give you kind of an explanation of what it was like to be at E3. And I think this is kind of neat here for the Harry Potter area. That would have been kind of cool to look at. Here you got some booth babes. Greg Seward, he's one of the editors of the magazine, and he won a contest, a NASCAR 2001 racing thing. So he won $6,000. And here are guys from like, they said Tony, I think that's Tony Hawk on the end, because they had like a half pipe set up, and they had like Tony Hawk and I think Dave Muir or somebody doing tricks on the pipe there. And there's Colby and Jerry from Survivor. Blink 182 is at Microsoft World. And there's a line here where the guy who wrote this up says, it's not a rare thing to see Shigeru Miyamoto palling with Perfect Dark producer Mark Edmonds at Nintendo parties, or at Nintendo's party. And it's like, you missed, I don't know if they even realize this, but he's a Perfect Dark producer. Rare makes Perfect Dark. It would have been the perfect pun to put, it's not a rare thing to see Shigeru. See, they could have just put quotation marks around it and capitalize it. Perfect pun right there. Perfect pun. Yeah, puns are lame, but still. There's a funny section here where they got E3's Wild Kingdom. So they got an outsider's perspective, and they commissioned Doug Johansson, wildlife editor of Huntin' Magazine, to do write-up profiles on all the different types of people at E3. So you got the booth babes, the Japanese developers, the game journalists, the PR hack, and the website fanboy. And so they have all of their behaviors, discuss distinguishing marks, their diet, and their mating call. I like the behavior. Shows up, smiles for the booth babe. And then here for the Japanese developer. Grants interviews, signs autographs, bows. Often travels in larger herds. So now we're at the review crew. This is where they review the games. Spoiler, game of the month, I guess I already spoiled it at the beginning, is the Oracle of Ages and Seasons games. So here we got the crew who reviews the games. I have a little bit of write-ups on all of them. I don't remember if there was anything particularly funny. I don't think there was about any of them. And it just says what their favorite genres are. And their current favorite is the Oracle series. And then they got their philosophy of a rating system of 0 to 10. And if it gets a 0, this is the kind of game you want to avoid at all costs. It's pure crap. So here's their review for Bloody Roar 3. So it's like a 6 and a 6 and a 5. And yeah, I feel that that's probably about right. There's only like 12 characters to play with, and so the idea of Bloody Roar is you turn into these animals, right? And there's 12 characters, and 2 of them can turn into tigers. I don't get that. There are more animals than 12. But the thing is, I just don't understand the point of doing it, because right off the bat when you start fighting, you have the ability to turn into one. I don't know if it makes you stronger or something. I mean, it must. Yeah, I don't know. It was okay, but it's just too easy to reverse the tide of a battle. Bloody Roar 3 is a lemon. Victory goes to the guy who can jam on the buttons faster. Kart Fury, because they liked it a little bit more than Bloody Roar 3. And the thing was, that's the thing is Kart Fury, and it has like real F1 racers in it, but it's like a somewhat of a kart racing game. I don't think there are weapons, but you can explode and crash and respawn and all that kind of stuff. But it did feel like, even though I was saying earlier that I like arcadey games and kart racers, there was something about the controls that seemed a little too easy. It seemed too simple. MX 2002 featuring Ricky Carmichael, they gave it like 7.5. And yeah, it was fine. You know, the controls were pretty good for it, I guess. You know, and if you're into BMXing racing games, it seemed to do okay by me. So Twisted Metal Black, yeah, they really liked it. 8, 9, 8.5. But like, I don't know. Like, it would have been cool to turn into that giant mech or something, but I don't know, I just kept, I wasn't having any fun. Like weapons weren't doing enough damage, I couldn't blow anyone up. Health bars were just so long, and the aiming, I don't know, maybe there was a lock-on button that I was missing, but I like how they say, what are the old Twisted Metal games like? And you got Twisted Metal 1, good. Twisted Metal 2, better. Twisted Metal 3, sucked. Twisted Metal 4, sucked. Oh, and the Rogue Trip and Other game by Single Track, cool. Escape from Monkey Island, they gave it a 9 here. I didn't really play it that much, but it's kind of one of those, I don't know if point and click's the right word, but you know, you just go talk to somebody, and then you're given options, and then you have to solve the situation with the options available to make the right choice to get you out of the situation you're in. I've heard good things about it, and they gave it a 9. Fur Fighters Vigo's Revenge, 6. It says, there is absolutely nothing remarkable about Fur Fighters VR. And yeah, I know this was like one of the first games I tried to play, but the controls were so broken, and it's in the sense like where, I can't remember, I think it was like like you have the analog sticks and the movement was on like the wrong joystick. I couldn't get used to it, so I couldn't play it. And you couldn't remap like in Halo where they let you customize how you want to move and stuff. I couldn't find an option to change. I don't think there was options to change any of your controllers, so I wasn't able to play it. Crazy Taxi 2 says a very solid game, easily worth the price of admission. So fans of Crazy Taxi won't need to worry, it's more the same. And that's the thing, it's more the same fun. And that's the thing is when I played it again, yeah, it just felt like regular Crazy Taxi, but in a different location with different drivers. It's not hard to love CT2, but it's harder to like it as much as the original. Sports Jam 5.5, 6, 5.5. Most of the events take only a few tries to master. Yeah, and it's just like little mini games of sports. Like they take like elements of sports and you just kind of like the way I play it, you have different options, but you can just do like first you do pass catching, and then you can do home run hitting, and then like goaltending for hockey. So you just do all these elements of sports and you go to the next competition. It's, I don't know, maybe if you need a quick sports fix, it's okay, I guess, in that sense, but there's not a lot of depth. Digimon World 2, I felt really kind of thrown into this game because when I first started playing it, I already had 3 Digimon. You know, back in the day when this cartoon came out, I watched Digimon more than I watched Pokemon. And I liked the cartoon. I liked the animation and the style way better than the Pokemon cartoon. But I didn't play the games. They gave this a 4.5, a 2, and a 2. And when I was playing it, yeah, it was like I felt like the game was already further along than it should be when it gave me my 3, when I was just in this like tank in this digital world, and then I get into a fight and I have my 3 Digimon. And it seemed kind of like straightforward type of RPG battling, or maybe Pokemon battling, but I didn't notice anything that wrong with it, but wow, they really didn't like it. I guess it got really boring, and he says about as exciting as watching paint dry. I love watching paint dry. Final Fantasy Chronicles, I already mentioned it earlier, just about the ad. 9, 8, and 8. I played a little bit of 4, and it seemed fine. Most of my Final Fantasy experience comes from, Final Fantasy VII and beyond, but I would like to go through the original 6 games. I did enjoy what I was playing so far of 4, but the other thing with Chrono Trigger, I had already started playing that game before. And yes, I've never beaten it, but again, it's a game I'd like to. So I played it a little bit more just to get an updated perspective on it. And after I had played it a bit, I went back to it a few days later to keep playing it because I did enjoy it and I really liked the music. The only thing that as I kept playing it, what I thought was kind of stupid was when you bring whatever his name is, I guess you get to name him whatever you want, brings the princess back to the castle, and immediately the chancellor's like, oh, you kidnapped her, blah, blah, blah. And so you go through this stupid trial, which just feels like a waste of time. I got really annoyed at that part because I'm like, this is an overreaction, and it just feels like, what is to gain here? I returned the girl home. I did not kidnap her, and she says that as well. So why go to all the stink of doing a show trial, a rigged trial to execute this kid? Like, unless later in the game it turns out that he knows he's from the future and he knows that my character, like maybe this guy's part of the bad guys and my character ends up ruining the plans of the bad guys, so he has to find a way to kill him in the past. Like, unless that was part of his plot, it just seems really stupid that the Chancellor overreacted like that. Not only that, but their whole kingdom seems corrupt. In terms of gameplay wise and characters and stuff, I have liked what I've played of Chrono Trigger, and I would like to beat it. Dave Mira Freestyle BMX Maximum Remix, they got an 8. So I think it's probably kind of like a Tony Hawk game, but with BMX bikes. World's Scariest Police Chase is 5.5. When I was playing it, I thought it was terrible and boring. And it wasn't scary, and the chases were weak. So we got here the Legend of Zelda Oracle series. Here is Oracle of Ages and Seasons. And yeah, I played them back to back, and they're the same game. They play exactly the same. Graphics and stuff. It's just a different thing. 2 different women, the Oracles, get kidnapped at the very beginning of the game by 2 different villains, and it's up to Link to go back to save them, right? And so one is about time and one's about seasons. Yeah, they got the exact same scores from John R. gave both of them 9.5s, Chris gave them both 10s, and then Mark gave them both 9s. So that's how they ended up having the same score and being the game of the month. But as you can see here, it says, here Link uses magnetic gloves, an item not found in ages, to pull himself across the lava. So yeah, there are differences of, I guess, items and probably other elements of the game. And obviously the dungeons and the worlds are going to be different. So like here's the past, the present and the past, I think, or the future and the past, I don't know. And then there looks like maybe spring and there's winter. And the thing was, I was also pretty impressed with the music for the games. They were pretty good. And I'm not much of a Game Boy, like Game Boy Color, Game Boy, original Game Boy kind of guy, but that might be one I would play. Tricks of the trade. We're just just tricks for games like cheat codes and this and that. Wow, what a waste of ad space. So here we are at the final word. So we have these guys here giving their opinion on the Xbox versus GameCube versus PlayStation 2. And here you have all their email addresses, so you could email them. So I wonder if they kind of plan this out, because there's one point, at first I thought these were just blurbs of each how they felt, but there's one guy who seems to comment on what the previous guy said. So I don't know if they took turns and then formulated their response. But one of these guys here, I think it was Craig, says that Xbox needs to turn it around. Maybe it's time for Bill Gates to throw another $500 bazillion at the problem. But then you got Mark, who says, saying Nintendo was rocking and the Xbox is screwed. But personally, I look back and I look at the games that were actually at E3. Nintendo had potentially cool Luigi and Pikmin, the Phantasy Star Online, Rogue Leader, but that's really as far as games that interest me. No real Metroid footage, no killer app along the lines of Mario 64. Xbox had Halo, the reason I will buy an Xbox, and the reason I bought an Xbox. Jet Grind, Munch, DOA 3, that's 4 games. As many as GameCubes, and more than I really wanted from the PS1, PS2, N64, Dreamcast launch lineups. So yeah, he's just talking about the launch lineups in itself. And then here, Che says, I think Mark has a point about Xbox. I'm sure there's a lot of mediocre games at the show, but given the potential of third parties, Sega, Capcom, Konami cooking up some big franchises for Microsoft, he thinks the playing field is pretty level. And now with Dreamcast leaving, well, he says, I hope it lasts that Xbox remains viable for at least as long as the Dreamcast. Is it like, so what? You think he hopes it lasts 3 years? Why would any true gamer want to see the Xbox fail? That's a good question. Jonathan says, the huge Nintendo of games we saw at E3 was impressive, but I think a lot of nostalgic gamers just got swept up away by seeing their old favorites on a new console. How many new names did Nintendo show? 1? We shouldn't be looking for a winner. The variety all the new systems bring will be incredible. And yeah, like that's the thing. They're talking about what Nintendo was saying about sequels and graphics and multi-platform. Yeah, what he just says here is that it's just a whole bunch of old favorites on a new system. And even here, James said something about being a little crybaby. After watching the opening salvo of Super Smash Bros. Melee, I was practically in tears. And I just never understand that, why these fanboys, not only on the verge of tears, but actually cry from watching trailers of movies and video game stuff. It's just like, come on, if you're crying about these things, you need to take a step back. You're a little too attached to these fictional properties. And here we got the next month, so they preview the next month issue. So that's the cover, exclusive cover. I think they say 1 in every 8 issues of the next month's issue will have that cover. I do have the next month's issue, but I did not get this cover, which I actually prefer the other cover. This is the artwork of Yoshitaka Amano, a famed Final Fantasy artist. You know, it's just that art style. That was another reason why the original Final Fantasy games didn't appeal to me too much, because it was all this kind of like very mellow, faded paints and look. Like it's just, I was not into that art style for their covers and stuff. I did not find it appealing at all, but I'm sure all the big Final Fantasy fans from back in the day loved it. And so I guess Ziff Davis, the publisher of this magazine, also published official US PlayStation magazine, Expert Gamer, and Computer Gaming World. It's also kind of interesting that they have an advertisers index here. So yeah, if you go back to these pages, you can see what these companies were advertising. That's interesting. I've never noticed that before. And on the back, we got Resident Evil Code Veronica X. I got that as a free game with games with gold for the 360. I mean, it's on the Xbox, the 360 version, which is I have on the Xbox One. Haven't played it yet, because I have all these Resident Evil games and I'm trying to play them in order. So that does it for EGM 145. And so from everyone here at Well Read, and I mean every single one of us, thanks for watching. You take care now. Bye.